I believe the Backrooms is heavily misunderstood, and here's why. Hi, gorgeous. My name is Sabrina, and welcome to my channel. The Backroom stars a man named Clark who is a drunk and a failed architect. He sees a therapist called Dr. Mary because he's unable to see past his trauma with his wife. His wife kicked him out the house for being an unreliable husband, we have to assume, because we received no further information other than them being separated. We discovered that they're separated because Clark came in stumbling one night from drinking too many beers and broke a glass, which led to a screaming match before he got the boot. And he pays for her law school. And he can't stop calling her fat for some reason. And I mean, he calls her fat quite a bit in this movie. But on the bright side, he owns a pirate-themed backroomish furniture store with his two employees, Bobby and Kat, who are dating. Now, Clark hires an electrician because he has worries and complaints and concerns that the power keeps going out in the shop. We later find out Clark is living there since being kicked out, which is how he knows. The two of them find a plethora of normal brake buttons, but two oddly placed red buttons appear. They figure it might have been the wiring before he bought it and decided to switch it on, and to no avail, nothing happened. Until the power goes out the next night. He finds the back room through a sharp, dimly lit carving of a door, which he enters to see his current world completely altered. He decides to tell Mary that downstairs of his furniture store, he discovered the back rooms. Mary tells him, "It's not that I don't believe you, because I do, but have you not been drinking?" His frantic mannerisms and the way that he was talking to her about the back rooms concerned her because he had just quit drinking. Now, I just mentioned earlier that Clark and his wife were separated due to him being an alcoholic and potentially being abusive to her, which we'll talk about later. Which brings me to our first theme. Sometimes as humans, we build our own prisons without intentionally knowing that we are. And I feel like we see this demonstrated with Clark when he enters the back rooms. Initially, he is so fascinated by this place, and it makes sense because he's an architect. So now it's a place that's a blank canvas. There's pretty much just yellow everywhere, maybe some occasional wood, but it's a blank canvas that he could do whatever he wants to do with it. And clearly the back rooms is built on memory, so it does pretty much whatever it wants to do in there anyway. He immediately thought, I feel comfortable in the back rooms because this is a place that I can mold to my reality. There's not people telling me about myself like Dr. Mary. There's not someone who's going to kick me out of my house like his wife. We also see this with Clark when he decides to make peace with his monsters. Now, what do I mean by making peace with his monsters? I essentially mean that in the scene where he kidnaps Dr. Mary, he brings her to this nostalgic kitchen that's very creepy and eerie, and they're sitting at the table, they're going back and forth, and there's three still lifes in the room with him, one being a redhead, which I presume and many others presume to be his wife. And in that scene, we witness Clark pretty much have a sense of control. Now, in the beginning of the movie, you could see how frantic he is because he can't control his life. His wife left him, his shop is not doing too well, and everything is just going out of his way. And I feel like Clark really struggles with the idea that he can't be in control all the time. So we see with the monsters, they can't respond to him. He's able to pretty much manipulate and do whatever he wants to do with them, as we saw where he literally snatched his wife's still life wig off. Come here. And we also see this when he literally eats the still life stomach at the table, saying we can eat them, which I'll get into as well later. But I looked at it from a more metaphorical lens because I feel like it's a life lesson that if you don't deal with your demons, they will overpower you. So we see when Clark is running through the back rooms, very frantic. He doesn't know what's going on or where these monsters are coming from. But then in the scene, they're all cool, calm, and collected, and none of them have this urgency to attack him or Dr. Mary. So it brings into question, how did he tame these monsters? And I feel like he tamed them because he decided to accept them in a way that was suitable for him. It wasn't in a way like, oh, I'm so sorry for my bad behavior. It was more so, okay, well, if I make myself believe that everything's okay, then things will work out. Now, at the dinner table, him and Dr. Mary are going back and forth, and he decides to tell her about these new changes and why he loves the back rooms. Clark has been in that furniture store for years, and the back rooms has made like a complete imbalanced copy of him, probably for a very long time, which is why we get Captain Clark later on. And I like to believe that it is his wife because he has so much animosity towards this still life. And I feel like how he made peace with her still life is the fact that she can't respond. I want to say that, and this is just my interpretation, that his wife was somebody who was willing to go back and forth with him because she cared about him. Clark's anger got the best of him, which caused him to be abusive to her. And the reason why I say this is because we see in the iconic Christmas scene where her still life is running towards him and she's holding her head. Now, it makes me believe and make an inference that he maybe hit her, because the still life also doesn't move in Clark's presence. It just stands there. And he even says, comically, turn on the light. She doesn't turn on the light. And then he asks her again and he goes, she still doesn't get that one. And it really just goes back to the beginning of the movie where he calls her fat and he says that she needs to get off her lazy behind. He really has a lot of anger towards her. So because he can mold and do whatever he wants to the still life, it makes me believe that he's also in some capacity being abusive to the still life as well. There was no fight back. He was able to accept the reality that he felt was real, not the actual reality that is happening. And the actual reality that is happening is that Clark is a detriment to everyone around him. Now, Clark is not the only person building his prison. Dr. Mary is building hers too. And we see this when she goes into the back rooms to save Clark. Now, naturally, I understand she is a therapist and she cares about her clients and she wants them to be safe, but you should do a house call by calling the police and having them assist you, not going into a back room alone with an unstable patient who you haven't seen in a few days. We also get insight to Dr. Mary and about her true feelings about being a therapist. She has spent her whole life trying to save people because she was unable to save her mother. And that prison of putting people above herself almost sent her to her early demise. I feel like instead of people comparing the Backrooms and Obsession to one another, they should look at the similarities, because both movies have quite the similarities in terms of how women are being treated. We see this with Clark and Dr. Mary. He has a sense of resentment towards her because she's the only person who holds him accountable and speaks to him with authority. Clark has a love-hate relationship from what I perceive of Dr. Mary. It's like he respects her so much to the point that he hates her. And I feel like that also is another mental prison block for him, because it's like he's never had anyone in his life to really hold him accountable aside from his wife. She went through all this trouble to find him just for him to kidnap her and possibly kill her because he's threatening her at knife point. And I feel like that has a bigger message for people who are people pleasers, that you can please as many people as you want, not realizing that these people don't care about you. She cares about Clark, but Clark clearly doesn't care about her, hence why he was getting ready to kill her if she so much objected to what he said. We see this when he says, hey, Kat, his employee, didn't follow the plan, and he literally beheaded her. We don't see it happen, but he tells us this when he opens up the refrigerator and her head is there. And I think that's enough social proof to know that you will literally build your prison to the point that you are stuck in it. And I feel like that was the moment that Dr. Mary realized that she got into a situation that she almost could not get out of. So I believe the Backrooms, while it can be metaphorical, it also could be very physical as well. Your mental can lead you to a very bad space physically. And in this case, Dr. Mary, she realized, I can't keep this up trying to save people or I'm going to lose myself, because she's already lost herself given the fact that she couldn't save her mom who was mentally unwell. So her being a therapist trying to repair that trauma, she didn't realize the trauma she needed to repair was inner working. She needed to physically have a life lesson to understand this prison is somewhere I no longer want to live, versus Clark. This is a prison that he wants to live in. He's happy with the way things are. He's happy given that he's in this Backrooms and he can do whatever he wants, because now he feels like, I've made peace with my demons. They're not after me no more. What's wrong with this place? It's perfect for me. And at that point, if you're so mentally in a bind, you don't realize that the space that you're in is actually not as euphoric as you think it is. And I also want to touch on the fact, and I don't know if anyone else has picked this up, but I feel like the Backrooms was already molding to Clark's memory in real time. Now, the Christmas room, and this could be a long shot to some people, but for me, this was just my interpretation. I felt like the Christmas scene was definitely a memory of Clark's. And the reason why is because when he walks in, he is petrified. He turns around and there is a still life in the wheelchair that I mentioned earlier that was at the dinner table that turns on the light, and then out comes running the still life of his wife holding her head. What makes me think that this is a memory is because this is the only room that really sets the scene compared to the rest of them. Like, we have a pool room, we have the laundry room, but this one seems so unique that it makes me believe that it's a memory of Clark's, because he literally had to run out the room because of how petrified he was of the still life of his wife chasing him. Now, I decided to look at it from a mental prison at that point, because this is him having to revisit a traumatic moment. Maybe on Christmas this was a memory of him hitting his wife, hence why she held her head. And then her limping towards him is after he abused her. I feel like this was possibly intentional on the director's behalf, because we also get a very intense outlook on this room. Because I swear, I feel like all the other rooms, Clark just kind of busy through them, but this one was one that we had to specifically analyze to the T. Another theme that I picked up on is that if we don't change, we will be consumed by our faults. Clark literally dies from the bigger, near identical version of him. I viewed Captain Clark as either Clark's big ego and a little body, or I also interpret it as him being a puppet to the people around him, because when he talked about his wife, he talked about how she didn't work and how much he had to do for her. So I pretty much felt like it related to him possibly not feeling real and just being a pawn in the shop, just essentially being used because that's all he's good for and that's all he feels like people use him for. I feel like that's also why he has so much rage and anger and has a lot of repressed feelings, because no one takes him seriously, not even his employees. When he's asking them to help him with a commercial, they're just like, you sure you want to do this? Or even Dr. Mary, where she kind of has something to refutate whatever he says. Like, no one takes him seriously for what he is saying. And at that point, it makes him feel like he is just not in this world. Like, he is not a real person, which is why he looks to his bigger self, his ego, to be able to soothe the pain that he feels. I feel like we get a glimpse of this when Clark decides to resort to cannibalism. Now, technically, it's not real cannibalism because these are still lifes, they're not real. But I like to imagine, because they're built off real people, I like to consider it to still be a form of cannibalism. And in this sense, I feel like it's symbolism for the fact that Clark has a disregard for human life or life itself because of how poorly he feels like he has been treated. Humans are awful to him. No one buys from his store. His therapist is stern with him. His wife left him. He finds happiness with these still lifes because they're the only form of species that can't reject him in the way that humans can. And I feel like the relationship with Clark and Captain Clark is very interesting, because Clark's relationship with the still lifes is very different. With the wife still life, Clark literally is poking at her, probing at her, literally making jokes at her, because that's not something he can do to his real wife. But when Captain Clark emerges, literally the whole room just feels intense and you feel engulfed into this scared emotion, because now you're just like, hold on, what's going on? Like, it's almost like him being big in size makes the room feel even smaller. And I want to know, this is just my theory, that this is just how his wife felt, because the still life literally runs to the corner, is screeching and like literally beating itself to try to get out. And I wonder if Clark made her feel like, because he felt like the biggest man in the room, that she had no space to go, that it was suffocating, and the room itself, despite being sizable, felt small. And I thought it was also just interesting because he literally stops Captain Clark from approaching Mary, and he says, hey, you know, this is okay. Like, we don't have to change, because he just told Mary, since she said you are irreparable and like, I can't help you, like, you are just not a good person. He's like, well, that's okay. I don't want to change. She's like, so don't change. If this is who you want to be who you want to be. And he tries to reassure Captain Clark that he doesn't have to change. But obviously it doesn't go in his favor, because he gets a bite to the shoulder and he gets messed up. So naturally, Clark is a volatile person because of how much he has been through. And this is just a symptom of how the world has treated him so cruelly. And as I always like to say, this is all just a reasoning. It's just all a symptom of the world being awful to Clark. But I always say that just because the world has been cruel to you or people have been cruel to you, it never gives you a reason to be a horrible person to others, especially when they don't deserve it. After Clark dies, he leaves behind Captain Clark, which is a much bigger, larger, terrifying, and revolting version of him after being copied by the Backrooms so many times. This is what he's left behind, an even more volatile and angry figure that's going to now torment the Backrooms. And I feel like this is beautiful symbolism on the movie's behalf, because at the end of the day, no one ever really talks about how bad people leave behind a slew of pain and anger and frustration to the living. So even if that bad person is now removed from this earth, your actions still have consequences. People will still suffer because of your actions. And I feel like that's what happened with Clark. Now that he's no longer there, his copy is going to literally wreak havoc in there. It's going to disrupt the nature of the Backrooms. Like, the Backrooms itself is not inherently bad or scary. It's the things that are in there. It's the demons that are in there from the memories of other people. So Clark has left an even bigger imprint in the Backrooms than he did in real life, and it's going to continue that cycle of abuse and pain. Clark was a drunk that didn't accept responsibility for his actions, and that is all he's going to be remembered for, because that is all that he contributed to the world. Now, the last theme that I came across was that you control your own destiny. Clark wanted to be an architect, but he couldn't do that because he was too busy and focused on paying the bills and making sure his wife goes to law school, essentially allowing her to live life while he takes the backseat. And I feel like that created resentment on Clark's part, because he had dreams that wasn't equally as supported. And I truly feel like, had he done the introspective work of looking inside of him to make his dreams come true, he probably would have. But at the end of the day, that is the lesson at hand, right? Many of us know what we want to do in life, but if you don't act on it, nothing's going to come of it. If you put other people's dreams and prioritize those over yours, what's going to come of it? I'm doing YouTube right now. This is my dream. I'm doing it. You have to carve that reality for yourself. And if you don't, you're going to sit and be bitter like Clark and now think that the world owes you something, or that the world failed you, when in actuality, you didn't apply yourself. You put everything before you. You allowed yourself to take care of others before you decide to take care of you. I truly believe Clark going into the Backrooms and looking for the meaning of life was also contributing to his downfall. He thought looking for the answer was going to solve it, and that was him taking control of his life, because it was a space that was unmoldable that he can mold. And that's a message within itself, because yes, you should follow your dreams, but if you go looking too hard in the wrong places, you will definitely end up in a space that you don't want to be in. And I truly believe that that was Clark. He found a space that he could be in control, but it was a space where he felt comfortable. You can never grow in a space of comfortability. You have to put yourself in those uncomfortable spaces to actually see the person that you're meant to be. Because at the end of the day, no matter where you go, it'll follow you. No matter if it's the real world, the back rooms, a sewer, space. If you have situations or if you have issues that are unresolved, and you think by running and finding the answer for them instead of looking inside of you is going to be it, I can tell you right now that Clark is a living example that by not handling your trauma accordingly, it will literally kill you. And I also feel like that's why a lot of people who went into the movie struggle with understanding these concepts, these themes, because they went into it looking for the answers to be given to them. And that's not the type of movie The Backrooms is. The Backrooms is actually exploring the mind, it's exploring your mental health, it's exploring all the ways that makes us ugly as humans, but also make us unique and beautiful. And when I say ugly, it brings out that raw grittiness, the anger, as we saw with Mary and Clark the longer they stayed in the Backrooms. But it also brings out the beauty. By the end of it, we see Mary, she comes to the conclusion, I can't save everyone, and it sets her free. And now she's happy and at peace with herself because she's released herself from that prison, and now she is choosing happiness. And we see this happen with Mary in real time. We watch her go through the trauma. Like, even though we're giving in the film glimpses of her life, like with her and her mom, they disappear into a back room, and then she's in a physical prison where her mom is mentally ill. The house is boarded up until it gets broken down. Her mom gets captured, and now she doesn't see her mom anymore. So after we see something like that, we see that Mary lives a very simple life, very strict, very to the point. And the movie keeps it that way. We don't know any fun details about her. She just shows up to work, boom, boom, boom. But in the Backrooms, these are new experiences. She's going through new rooms, and it's terrifying. And you can see the fear on her face. Like, yes, she's being chased and whatnot, but if you look at it from a symbolic angle, you can see that she's being put into a space that she's so uncomfortable with, but she's fighting through, because at the end of the day, the only way that you can get through whatever you're going through is by going through it. So we go through this with Mary in hopes that she makes it out on the other side, because we're going to always root for the main character to live. And of course, she makes it to the other side. Now, it's debatable if the other side is, it was one of those the grass is greener type of situations, but at least we know that she made peace with herself, and I feel like that's the best outcome to have come out of all of this. And it's almost ironic that the movie kind of pokes fun at Mary because she's being chased by her client. Like, yes, it's not the real Clark, but it's Captain Clark, and she's being chased by her own consequences of trying to save somebody, much to her detriment. I truly believe more people need to be in tune with their nervous system, because Mary's ending kind of feels poetic. Because as I said, there's nothing chaotic happening. She went through the motions. She zoned out to really process everything. And that's it. And I truly believe that our society makes people believe that you have to jump through hoops to be able to fix your trauma. But no, sometimes it's as simple as just saying, I'm done with this. I deserve more, and I'm going to be more. Sometimes just sitting with yourself is the right thing to do. But despite the great themes, I do believe that this movie had its shortcomings. I truly believe there was too many half-baked storylines and too many questions that were left behind. For instance, I don't believe either main characters were very interesting. Sue me, I know, but I feel like Clark's storyline, it was not that interesting. And I'm not trying to reduce, him potentially being an abuser and just being toxic to his wife by saying that that's boring. What I am saying is, I don't feel like the story, given how heavy it was fleshed out enough for the audience to care. Now, I cared because I'm like, okay, how is this going to play out into the movie? And as I went along, I started piecing that together. But I noticed that a lot of people online didn't quite understand. I feel like it's because they almost made his background so minuscule in terms of information and left so much to interpretation, to the point that it really could be a hit or miss if you're just watching. Like, I'm someone who's never watched any Backrooms content. I think I've only watched maybe one video of the director like a month prior to the movie, but I don't feel like you should have to watch the series to kind of get it. Like, I understand that it's supposed to be introspective, but the directing choices kind of made it very hard to navigate and follow along to every person's storyline. And then when you try to, there just wasn't enough meat there. And we also see this with Mary. So in the beginning of the movie, we see a mother and a daughter, and there's a crane on top, really sick shot. But it's getting ready to drop rubble, and the characters disappear, and we see handprints in the cement because the house is burned down and is being rebuilt. So Mary's standing across the street from her car, and she's watching. And I feel like that was an instance where I was like, holy crap, did she witness somebody like warp into the back rooms? But then as the movie went along, I'm like, wait a minute, they keep referencing this mom and child. Who is this, and why are they pointing to the story? It wasn't until after I finished the movie that I realized that was Mary's backstory, and I kind of missed out on that crucial detail because of that directing choice. And I wish that we just got a little bit more information on both, because they had so much potential to be so fleshed out. I loved how many chase scenes were in the movie. I thought that they were so fun and so campy, especially Bobby when he slides down. It almost felt like a slasher where it's like the main character gets into something they're not supposed to, and now they end up in this room where they're getting ready to be killed. But it was done in such a more tasteful way, because Bobby walks over to this pile of clothes and he sees a shirt that he's already worn, which is so spooky because it was a little clue that I picked up on after the movie. But as he's walking around, you also notice a face in the clothes. Now, some people said it's a cutout, but I thought it was a real person. Like, it was just like a cave dweller, if you will. But that was an amazing scene. I also thought Clark's scenes were great, especially that Christmas one. I know I referenced it a lot, but I loved it so much. It was probably one of my favorite rooms in the entire movie. And Mary's scenes were pretty good. I think hers was my least favorite compared to everyone else's, because hers just kind of, I don't know, they didn't really invoke as much emotion. I thought it was cool, but by the time Mary's chase scenes came up, they kind of just felt a little weaker compared to Clark's. But ultimately, I just felt as though those chases kind of led to nothing. Like, we don't get any more information about Bobby after he died. We don't get any more information about Kat and how she died. We don't really understand how Clark was able to make it through all that, and then he ended up in that kitchen with all of those still lifes. I also feel like Kat and Bobby were heavily underutilized. The moment I saw them, I knew they were going to be throwaway characters. I hate when I can watch a movie and I can tell they're going to be throwaway characters. Why, if you're just going to kill off random people, just make them just show up down there. We don't need to have you establish these minor characters just to kill them off like 20 minutes later. I would say I was definitely disappointed in Kat's death because, like I said before, I felt like hers was just unexplained. It happened off camera. I'm not saying we needed to see it, but I definitely feel like we should have at least seen what led up to it, because her and Clark do meet up in the middle. Did they get into an argument? Did she run from him? Did he run after her? Did he stick, Captain Clark on her? Like, there's just so much room for interpretation and just questions. And just to revisit this, in the scene with Kat and Clark, the two of them are standing on different sides of a wall. Clark's wall is in a pool room, and it's the yellow pattern, I believe. And on the other side is Kat, and she's saying that she's in a glass room. And I'm just like, okay, how does that work? How is that possible? And if you can walk through walls, why was she incapable of walking through the wall to get to Clark? It's just the continuity of the Backrooms kind of lost me there. And then the camera gets picked up, and I'm thinking it's getting ready to turn around, it's getting ready to show us what it is, but it never turns around. It never shows us what it is. So now I'm like, was that Captain Clark? And was he filming her? And of course, if any of you guys have any answers to these questions, I would love to hear them down below. In my opinion, I don't believe a creepypasta should be made into an elongated film, maybe a short film, because no amount of lore was able to save the movie from how boring yet insightful it was. It abandons its main cast for cool, dreamy, eerie shots, but it essentially loses its main audience with the weak plot and just unexplained questions. After watching one of the director's videos on YouTube, I realized the whole thing is on found footage. Like, I know most of the Backrooms content now, at least I know, is built on found footage. So I really wish that when Bobby died that Clark kept up with the camera. Like, I know he did initially, and it was really cool. It was sick. Like, I definitely feel like it gave a different feel, and that's a stylistic choice that I wish we kept throughout the movie. Otherwise, the movie kind of just became like a regular thriller, and I kind of lost interest as I was watching, because I was expecting that it would be kind of like the Blair Witch Project, where it's like the whole thing is pretty much filmed. Like, that's pretty much what people identify the Backrooms as anyway. So much to my dismay, I definitely wish that that was a choice that they had kept in. And I would have loved to just see further about like Clark's transition with the camera, and maybe once he dropped it, it gets picked up by Mary, and now her whole thing is through the camera lens. I truly believe that that would have been such an awesome movie, and it definitely would have taken it from like a 6 to me to probably like an 8. To note, I didn't hate the film, but I didn't love it. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but I'm always going to support a creative, and a young creative at that, because in Hollywood it's very difficult for young creatives to even get noticed at this point or be acknowledged for their beautiful work. So kudos to the director, because I feel like he deserves all his success and all his effort, and for seeing his project be pushed through. Because as a creative myself, I know that sometimes when you try to bring something to fruition, you try to bring it to life, sometimes there could be setbacks, or sometimes you abandon the project altogether. So for this to be his first film, his first attempt at a film, spectacular job. I'm always gonna give credit where credit is due, and I definitely believe he deserves it. Thank you, gorgeous, for watching. Please like, subscribe, and follow for more. If you haven't already, please check out my previous video that I did on obsession. It's a really good one. And don't forget to leave down below what else you would like for me to cover, if there's any new movies that you would like for me to go see and review, and I will be sure to respond. Thank you, gorgeous, once again. Bye.